Welcome to the Shuttered Venue Operator Grant webinar, the sixth in our Navigating Your Business Through COVID-19 webinar series. These webinars are being recorded and will be available for review on our website approximately 24 hours after today's session. Today's webinar provides an overview of updates on the application process for SVOG, including required documentation by entity type. The Small Business and Technology Development Center is an SBA partner and will be providing technical assistance to SVOG applicants. I'm Bob Weston, Director of the SBTDC's statewide COVID-19 Business Recovery and Resiliency Program, a CARES Act funded initiative expanding Small Business and Technology Development Center capacity to assist businesses in successfully navigating the COVID-19 crisis. Next. I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of Byron Hicks, our State Director of the SBTDC. Byron was named the State Director of the Small Business and Technology Development Center in January 2021, after 10 years of service to the SBTDC as a General Business Counselor and a Regional Center Director. He also serves as the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Business and Technology Extension Programs in the Office of External Affairs Partnerships and Economic Development at NC State University. Next. The SBTDC is the business and technology extension of the University of North Carolina system. For over 36 years, the SBTDC has been a resource for business owners, providing confidential counseling, educational programs, and a connection to university resources to help them make their businesses better. The SBTDC operates 10 regional centers across the state that are hosted by our UNC system campuses, with 16 offices covering all 100 North Carolina counties. Business resiliency counselors are now embedded with each of our 10 regional centers. Next, I'd like to introduce Ashley Swanger. Ashley is going to introduce our webinar and start our program.
Thank you, Bob. Again, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. So just a quick run through of the panelists here today. We are all part of the business resiliency team, and we have been focused specifically on the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. So joining us today, we have Paige Griffin, who's based at Elizabeth City State University, Joseph James for UNC Pembroke, Cynthia DeVito Cochran for UNC Wilmington, and I'm Ashley Swanger, based in Asheville, Western Carolina University and UNC Asheville. For our agenda today, as Bob mentioned, this presentation will be recorded and shared. We remind you that there is a Q&A box. Encourage you to go ahead and enter any questions that you have along the way in that Q&A using the Q&A box, and then we will do Q&A at the end of our presentation, trying to give kind of the majority of our time over to answering questions as best we can. So as everyone knows, the portal was open last week only to be shut down due to technical difficulties. We did have some updates from a technical assistance call for partners who were helping with this program with the SBA yesterday, and we have a few updates that we wanted to share with you. So we'll get into that in just a moment, and then we are going to also talk a little bit about the documents that are required by entity type, share some resource information slides that will be available in the recording and in the presentation slides that will be shared later this week. And then we'll talk a little about our webinar agenda schedule. So the updates from yesterday, no applications were accepted last week. So the portal was taken down before any applications were accepted. So one of the updates that the SBA shared is that any forms that were completed last week will still be saved, but no document uploads will be saved. So if you uploaded any documents, you'll have to start over on that process, but any of the other forms that you got completed should be saved into your account. If you haven't signed up for an account yet, please go ahead and do that. And make sure you're also signed up for updates on the SBA portal, because that'll be the best way to get the most current information. The announcement from the SBA about when the portal will reopen to accept applications will be done via a press release and Twitter, and other social media outlets. So keep a lookout for those, because that is how they plan to share that information. Excuse me. They did indicate that due to feedback and from when the application was open, and some additional questions there, that they are going to update both the FAQ and the application guide. So you may notice that the application guide is no longer live on the site and it says coming soon. So they're going to update both of those documents. The FAQs will likely come out first, followed by the application guide, and they have indicated that their goal is to have both of these available at least 24 hours prior to reopening the applications. There are no major changes to the application content for what you saw last week if you were able to get in. Mainly the updates have to do with providing some additional clarity. And the biggest technical issue that they had was related to being able to upload documents. A couple of other updates, just a reminder that when the applications do reopen, they'll be open to everyone regardless of priority period. The questions will be very specific, so there'll be additional clarification about what you need to upload, and any documents you upload should be the best representation of the information that's being requested. In the application, if you are asked to upload the same documentation with multiple questions, you should upload it each time it's asked. That's just a restriction of the application, the workflow of the application. So if they ask for a floor plan, for example, in more than one place, you'll need to upload that document in each place that it's requested. Another note is that the DUNS +4, if you have this, you'll enter it. If you don't have it, the guidance, and this will again be updated in the application guidance and the FAQs, but will be to enter zeros if you don't have a DUNS +4 number. As it relates to revenue, for the purposes of this grant, the terms earned revenue and gross earned revenue are used interchangeably. This is the basis for the awards. Your gross revenue is used for priority periods and will include all money that you receive in any form, with the exception of disaster relief. So this will include, there's been some questions whether or not this would include restricted funds. You should include that in your gross revenue. However, you do not need to include unrealized gains in your gross revenue. For documents, people have asked, a question that's been come up a lot is, how many documents do I need to provide? So there's going to be a max of 10 files per question. And then for those entities that have to show regular programming, you'll add 10 files that represent 2 months worth of programming. And if you are seasonal and you have less than 10 events per season or year, then you'll just upload all of those. So now I'm going to turn it over to Paige to talk about the live venue document information.
Thank you, Ashley. Next, please. So this is specific to live venue operators, promoters, and one of the operational requirements that they are letting us know that they need by the date of receiving the award, you would have resumed organizing, promoting, producing, managing, or hosting the live events. Some of the facility requirements that they have is that you must have a defined space for your performance and your audience, that you use mixing equipment, have a public address system, and a lightning rig. And if you have one or more employees hired, they will hold the roles of the sound engineer, a booker, a promoter, the stage manager, security personnel, or the box off manager. Next. Another part of the facility requirements are that there is a paid ticket to attend most of the performances, and that they are paid rather than just work for tips or for free. If you're a nonprofit that produces free events, that you would be produced and managed by employees and not by volunteers is another one of the requirements. And as far as marketing the performances, they are asking for proof and documents that you have used it through electronic publications, social media, mass email, through your websites. And if you are, Ashley mentioned this earlier, if you're the applicant and of the operator venue, that you have to provide a floor plan. There are several places in the application that it might ask, and you think, oh, I've already done this. You need to do it again. It is the nature of this particular application that they're using. And if the applicant is the operator of the venue, the documents, you will have to have documents that show the audio mixing, that the lightning rig, and for the public address system. And last, these are specific to producing the live events as far as art events at the venues. If you do not operate, there's a list of venues at which the applicant has promoted, whether you produced it, managed it, or hosted live events between January 2019 and February 29th, 2020. Again, those marketing materials must list the event title, the show time, the price, if that was included in your printed materials. And then the box office ticketing report will also show the dates and the artist and the ticket prices. And actually even the number of events, the tickets sold for that event for all of the February 2020 performances. And now I'm going to turn it over to Joseph.
Thank you, Paige. So we're going to talk a bit about motion picture theater operators. You'll find as I go through the different facility requirements and documentation requirements, there's a little bit of overlap, but there are some specific things as well. So I think this can be helpful information. Obviously, you need to be in business or have plans to reopen for the specific purpose of exhibiting motion pictures. Facility requirements are that you need at least one auditorium with a motion picture screen and fixed audience seating. And I want to call your attention especially to that and fixed audience seating. That's a sort of a baseline requirement. So for example, if you operate a drive-in theater that has no fixed seating, then the drive-in theater wouldn't qualify as a motion picture operator. Also, you want to have a projection booth or some space where you can have motion picture projectors. And we'll go over some of the specific documentation requirements on these in just a moment. Also, paid ticket charges are necessary. And you also have some evidence of marketing motion pictures through a variety of listings. They can be in print material, social media posts, websites, or mass email, but you'll need to demonstrate that you're actively marketing motion picture exhibitions. In terms of demonstrating or validating that you meet those eligibility criteria, the first one, kind of if you have it available, a floor plan that shows the projector room, shows the fixed audience seating and all of that. If you have something like that, then that was probably the most comprehensive and individual form of documentation that you can demonstrate. But if for some reason you don't have a floor plan document, then you can provide some proof of a cinema projection system and a photo of at least one auditorium that shows the fixed audience seating. In terms of providing evidence of the projection system, you can use service contracts, digital cinema certification forms, purchase agreements, things like that that demonstrate that you actually have the projection system. In terms of your marketing materials, these can include print materials, social media posts. As I think was Ashley mentioned earlier, you can upload per question. You can upload up to 10 documents. So you'll you can include URLs, you can include screen captures of social media posts if they're backdated, things of that nature. In terms of reporting on your ticket sales, they'll want to know what your show dates were, ticket prices, and the number of tickets that were sold, in particular for February 2020 performances. That's when sort of as you all know, everything started going wrong for us related to the pandemic. And so if for some reason you were in operation, but you didn't have any performances on February 2020, then choose any month of the year prior, so between January 2019 to January 2020, and provide your ticket sale information from that. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Ashley here to share with you some of the requirements for museum operators.
Thank you, Joseph. Again, just like the other entity types, you need to be open or intend to reopen, and you need to have an indoor exhibition space or component of a principal's business activity that has had some pandemic-related occupancy restrictions. So this is going to be just anything where you have had to restrict your occupancy or limit the number of people who can come into your facility specifically because of COVID. Another facility requirement is to have at least one auditorium, theater, performance area with fixed audience seating and regular programming, where regular programming, as we just mentioned earlier, is 4 events per month is what constitutes regular programming. Again, if you are a seasonal or something of that nature, then if you have less than 10 events in a year, then you would upload all of those. Otherwise, you're going to upload your programming that represents 10 events that you offer across a 2-month period. For some additional specific documents, also here you need to have a floor plan. If you have outdoor space, that can be a plan of grounds. Your floor plan can be documents that you might use for insurance purposes or for your local fire and marshal inspections, something of that nature. You just need to be sure that it does include the performance space. You can see that space as part of the floor plan. So you might want to highlight that in the document that you use to upload for your floor plan. Again, a notation about having occupancy restrictions. So any state or local restrictions that have been in place or were in place, you could include those. Now I'll turn it over to Cynthia to talk about talent representatives and some of the specifics there.
Thank you, Ashley. So to qualify as a talent representative, you must be representing or managing artists and entertainers. Those could be comedians or any kind of talent. Athletes are actually included also in the latest guidance from the SBA, that you could have that within the individuals that you manage. Like other categories for this grant, it must take up about 70% of your time or more managing these artists. And in this case, you have to represent at least 2 in order to qualify. So what would you be able to provide in terms of documents to the SBA that you could upload? To prove that you are a talent representative, you can provide contractual or consultant agreements with the talent that you are representing and venues used in evidence of booking. Now, there's also some guidance in the latest FAQ that if you don't have formal contracts that you can point to, you could provide signed statements by the individuals that are being represented by you. So those would be sufficient alternate forms of proof. And then a list of all those individuals, acts that you represent, and the venues where they were booked in 2019 and 2020. Also be sure to include any performances that might have been canceled due to COVID-19, because of course that is evidence that your business was negatively impacted and you are in need of this grant. So As we've been speaking to you, we've been also answering some of your Q&A questions, some of your questions in the Q&A box. So I'm going to read some of those in just a moment. But if you have any other questions, I ask that you go ahead and type those in the Q&A. My colleagues are quickly typing answers so that they can get you the best information. And I'm going to read a few of those as we go, but we will answer until we've either completed answering those or till we reach the top of the hour. I did want to remind you while my colleagues are still working on those answers in the Q&A, that we will continue to have webinars in this series. The next one will start the week of April 26th. And that this webinar, as all webinars are that we are producing for this series, will be available. The recording will be available tomorrow, about 24 hours from now. One thing that we want to strongly encourage you to do, though, in addition to reviewing information and entering Q&A, entering questions in the Q&A box today, is we really want you to connect with a business counselor, particularly a business resiliency counselor, to answer your questions in more depth. We are limited by the typing questions and typing answers to questions, but if you need to have a conversation, we are here for you. We're acting as a partner to the SBA since their representatives are not able to answer specific questions about specific applicants due to the nature of this grant process. So we do ask that you would reach out to us at sbtdc.org/ERFC. That's an electronic request for counseling. And if you do that, then you'll be partnered with a counselor who can help you specifically on your needs. So we do have quite a few questions. I'm gonna read some of the answered ones. And again, keep entering those questions. I also have one that I was going to read that are, if we get through the answered questions, I'll come back to the open ones. And I'm going to reach out to my colleagues to answer those live since we've got a little bit of extra time. First of all, Steve Strickland asked if the SBA uses the same definition of performing arts as the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. We're unsure. We don't have the direct link to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but we do understand that the SBA definition is a performing arts operator as any entity which meets the criteria established under the Academic Aid Act, whose principal business is to create, produce, perform, and/or present live performances for audiences in qualifying venues, including amphitheaters, concert halls, auditoriums, theaters, clubs, festivals, and schools. And that's directly from the SBA's FAQ document of 4821 on page 14. Trista Porter asked for documents about the audio systems. What would that look like? Photos of the equipment. Ashley provided the answer from the most recent FAQ, number 26. Answer number 26 states that many venues have that alternative types of evidence are adequate proof that a venue possesses the required equipment. That might include rental receipts, photographs, text specs sheets, product reimbursement receipts, and the like. Alicia Gray asked, as a nonprofit, we do not pay our actors. They are volunteers. Are we still eligible? But she did state that they have primarily paid staff that manages and produces events. Ashley answered, as an owner-operator of a nonprofit, if you offer free events, then having paid staff would still qualify you if you meet the other eligibility requirements. Thanks for that answer, Ashley. And John Russell asked, would we stand a better chance of getting through the initial cull if we uploaded more documents than strictly required? For example, they could provide 990s or along with the form 4506T. Joseph answered, it's important to meet the basic documentation requirements, keeping in mind that 10 document per question limit. So additional information is not likely to hurt, but we aren't sure that provides any particular advantage. Caitlin Sweat asked, do you recommend combining PDFs for multiple documents rather than uploading 10 separate documents, or is it better to separate documents out? Ashley replied that you could upload a combination of PDFs as long as a combined PDF, as long as it does not exceed the maximum file size. This will be verified in the updated application guidance, which we don't currently have. Susan, okay, your question was answered live. I represent an art museum. We often have musical performances. This is Trista Porter's question for our events and fundraisers, but wanted to clarify that if we do not have an actual auditorium or performance space with fixed seating, we do not qualify. We are an adaptable space. We put chairs out for all of our events, but we're a small venue, so we don't have an actual auditorium space. Ashley replied that fixed seating is a requirement for museums. We would encourage you to sign up with a counselor, though, to discuss your specific situation. Margaret DeMott asked, originally, they were making a distinction between gross revenue and gross earned revenue, but the distinction was not in the application. Is it your understanding that they are not making that distinction in the revised application? And Ashley let us know that earned revenue and gross earned revenue are used interchangeably for the purposes of the application. Gross revenue is all revenue. There will be a place for both numbers in the updated application. All right, so that is all of the answered questions. I had one that I marked I was going to answer live. Stephen Robinson's question about your theater has lighting equipment and sound equipment, but you don't have receipts for that purchase. I think we may have already answered that question, so I just want to confirm that yes, alternate forms of proof are acceptable. Caitlin Sweat, as a nonprofit organization providing a list of venues we do not operate, do we upload this document in place of floor plans and equipment, or is there a separate upload for this document? Would any of my colleagues like to? Paige, I think you're typing an answer to that, so I'll come back to that one. Stephen Hageman is asking us to explain crosswalk listing of all individuals or acts represented and venues for which they were contracted to perform. I'm guessing that might be a good answer, a good question, perhaps for Ashley or Joseph, who would like to tackle that.
I'll certainly happy to field it. So I think what you're thinking about is like a matrix. So you want to be able to indicate who the folks are that well, let me back up for a second. And depending on if you're taking this from the perspective of a venue operator or talent representative, for example, there could be some different requirements here, but you know, just on the face of that, you know, I think there's, you know, you want to have like I think of it from a matrix, from a spreadsheet. So you want to be able to track who was performing when and where, essentially. And but perhaps somebody's got a little more detail than that.
Yeah, maybe we can take a minute to look up, maybe the crosswalk listing is the confusing term there. Elizabeth Doran, and I, so we'll come back to that, Stephen. Again, we would encourage you to reach out to a counselor for really detailed questions, and maybe that's one that we just need to find the definition for crosswalk listing. Let me move on to Elizabeth Doran. There are 3 references to employee count. I'm not sure what the question is there, Elizabeth. Do you, so you might, if you can post again what your question is exactly. I'm a little unclear. Are you asking how many employees, or are you asking, are you pointing out maybe there's a difference in definition? So I'm not sure. I will click. Maybe someone can look that one up.
I can answer that for her. They're actually, what she's asking for is there are 3 types. They're looking for previous employees, they're looking for current employees, and then employees between the time period, I believe it was time period from March 1st, 2019 to possibly February 29th, 2020. Again, that's going on my memory. And it's somewhere, I believe, page 28 of the frequently asked questions.
So basically the question is,
she's looking for all 3. Yes, they are asking for all 3.
They want to track how many employees you had at different times.
Correct, okay. Correct. And I can actually answer it in the chat if that would be more helpful.
That would be great. Jerome, if we received revenue in the last half of 2019 / first quarter of 2020, but the event for which the money was received was postponed due to the pandemic, did you say that we should count that money as 2019 or 20 revenue? That's a good question. Who would like to tackle that? That's it was received but postponed. Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, I'm not sure without some additional details exactly how to respond to that. I think that what we were talking about in regards to revenue is more just about the difference between your gross revenue and your earned revenue, were some of the clarifications that we were making there. So I'm not sure that there's quite enough information to understand how the postponement, like what was the period, if you're saying like it crossed over years, and how would you count that? So I'm not sure.
That might be an accounting question that you could ask, speak with your business resiliency counselor in more detail. Maybe you'll be able to give you more guidance.
Looking at the financials would help answer that question pretty easily.
Okay, great. Jerome, please reach out and register for direct counseling. Looks like Elizabeth's getting an answer from Paige. So I'm going to skip that one. Caitlin Sweat, as a nonprofit arts organization that produces has a 5.5 week season, can our box office report encompass the full season, which is the last half of June and the first half of July, or should we just select 1 month? Who would like to tackle that one? We were talking about samples for seasonal venues.
I could clarify, I'm not sure if this is answering the question or not, but yesterday, and this is one of the things that I think they're going to update in the FAQs also, is they did talk a little bit about if you're seasonal or you don't operate for a full year, then you would upload all of your programming information. So I'm not sure if that's the question or if it's asking for a different part of the application, but that was what was suggested, that you would upload
for
all
seasonal
of the information.
Yeah, if you're seasonal,
Right.
you could upload all of it, right? If you fit within the document size
so if there's
requirements.
Additional clarification there, then maybe you could ask another part of that question, or again, get into contact with us, and then we can kind of follow up on the specific.
Yes, Caitlin, please ask it again, or ask it to provide us some more details if you in the Q&A. If we did not answer that question. Laura Krapp, I understand our application has to have the same address as our DUNS or it will be denied. Our box office address is current, but our physical address is for an old remote office. Can our application just use our PO box? Our PO box is acceptable, or do they have to align to the DUNS number? Who would like to take that one? Does that need a little bit more homework? All right.
I've been searching for it. I haven't found anything specific just yet, so I need a little homework.
I would ask too, I guess, maybe if there's like, is there a possibility to update the DUNS address? I'm not sure exactly with that question. It's a matter of like not being able to update the application information for the DUNS, or
right. I don't think DUNS may not allow for the PO box. Has to have a physical location. I'm not sure. So that's a good question, Laura. Can we pursue that? Go ahead. Yes. Hi, Bob.
This is Bob. That is correct. For DUNS, you do have to put in a physical address.
Okay.
So that's, you can't put it in as a PO box.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Laura also asked, what's the category for depreciation expense on the proposed budget request? Is depreciation an expense? That's a question. Good question. Whether depreciation is an allowable expense.
But I'm not sure about that question exactly, but I know for the budget, the intent of the budget is to show how you plan to spend the money. So that's what you're putting your budget together, is how you intend to use the funds that you would be awarded, not your full operating budget, but specifically how you intend to use the funds that would be awarded for the grant.
And that is correct.
Okay, great. So in that case, then depreciation would not be an allowable aspect of expenses. Okay. All right, Gail, Thacker has a question. If we are a rental theater, do we need access to the rentals ticket sales? They're a venue. They may not sell the tickets. Evidently, it looks like those who rent the theater sell the tickets. Who would like to tackle that one?
I'm not sure that there's enough information to answer that question adequately, but we can do a little searching to see if we can come up with something before we log off.
Okay, Gail, I'm going to skip that and we're going to try to answer that one directly. Someone will tackle that in just a second. John Russell, SBA had indicated on Thursday that awards would be based on total gross revenue rather than gross earned revenue. Is that correct to your knowledge? That's a change from the original FAQs. There's been a lot of discussion about this, so let's just clarify.
Yeah. Hey, John, and this is, I think, again, something that will also update in the FAQs or just highlight to provide additional clarity. The award, the basis for the award is earned revenue or gross earned revenue, where they're using those terms interchangeably. Your gross revenue is strictly for the priority period. So gross earned revenue is the basis for the award.
All right, again, if you guys have additional questions or points to clarify, just feel free to enter those in the Q&A box and we will try to get to them if we can before the top of the hour. Elizabeth had a question, additional question. List of employees at February 29th, list of employees, I assume current, average number of employees from March 1st, 2019. You need 3 lists. Is that correct, Paige? Yes.
Yes, sorry, I'm sitting here typing. I will include her on that as well.
That's great.
Sorry, I've got like 3 going right now. Forgive me.
Yeah, so they're snapshots in time. They want to know, the SBA wants to know how many employees you had at those 3 periods in time. So I assume that means 3 lists. Jerome, if we received revenue in the last half of 2019, so this is clarification, I guess, for his earlier question, and the first quarter of 2020, but the event for which the money was received was postponed due to the pandemic, should we count the money as 19/20 revenue? I'm guessing you're asking if you counted in 19 or 20. That's an accounting question. I think it's probably best, Jerome, if you connect with a business counselor and or speak to your financial advisor for that. That's really a finances question. Sarah Wumble, would an employee list include independent contractors or just actual employees? Thank you.
The employee list is employees, I believe. I don't believe that you include contractors on the list for your employee count, because that's what that's related to.
But paying 1099s is an allowable use of funds, according to the FAQs. So just want to confirm that, because that is definitely on page 9. Can we do a little homework on that, or is that definitive? Okay, great, thank you. I had that question with another client, so it came up, so I wanted to make sure that we get that answered correctly for you, Sarah. We're going to work on that. Tracy C, we are a nonprofit and have an investment in a beneficial trust. We don't own individual investments. We have a pro rata interest in the trust. We receive our pro rata income as one total. There is no breakout of the revenue that would give me unrealized gains and losses. I'm concerned that unrealized gains and losses are impacting gross revenue. How should we handle this? That was actually part of the discussion yesterday at the SBA webinar, unrealized gains, but this is a little bit more specific. Do we want to do a little homework on that and answer it, or should we encourage Tracy to connect with a counselor on the specifics of that.
I think that would be a good one to connect with a counselor on, because I think that is one of the areas that they're clarifying a little bit further. And that's the best way to make sure you get the most current information on that topic.
Great. Thank you, Joseph. I agree, Tracy. So we would encourage you to register for a one-on-one with a counselor at sbtdc.org/ERFC. Elizabeth, okay. Elizabeth thinks we're not right about depreciation not being allowable. So let's do a little homework on that and see if we can't answer that for Elizabeth. Laura Kratt, FYI, the FAQ said depreciation was allowable. Page 28, number 11. Okay, we were wrong. Thank you, Laura, for correcting. Vicki Hudson, FAQs. Okay, same thing. Everybody answers it. Okay. Carol Woodell, just a note, can you please share a copy of this QA when you send the link for the recording? That's a good question. Catherine Katz, I think, is on the call. I'm not sure about that. Catherine, can you answer that for us, or Bob? Will the Q&As be part of it?
The Q&A, hey, this is Catherine Katz, sorry. The Q&A is not posted. However, if you go and reach out via, sbtdc.org/ERFC, a counselor can answer any of your questions.
Okay, great. Michelle has a housekeeping question. Will the questions, oh, same thing. Elizabeth had a comment. I did include contractors because I said not on payroll as one way to describe an employee. Okay. Sherry, you're welcome, Sarah. Thanks for your comment. Sherry DeVries, on financials, we are a not-for-profit whose fiscal year is July 1 to June 30th. The application says 2019 and 2020. Does that mean calendar year, or can we provide financial reports in our fiscal year formats? That's a good question. Does anyone have insight into that?
This is Bob. I've seen that question before, but I haven't seen an answer to it yet. But we can follow up with our contacts and see if they can get us one.
Okay.
So we'll make a note of that.
So again, Sherry, if you'll reach out to us directly at sbtdc.org/ERSC, then we can make sure we provide you accurate information on that. Carol Woodell is clarifying. She's explaining that they're an outdoor venue. Gail Thacker first. To help explaining, we're applying for the venue operators grant. They both produce and rent their black box theater. And the question I think earlier was whether if they don't sell tickets, do they need to provide receipts from the people who use their theater who do sell tickets? Does anyone have any insight into that question?
I was looking for some additional information on that, and did also post, just going back to the earlier question about 1099s, how posted a response to that as well.
Let's see. You posted that in answers.
I did, yes.
Okay. Don't see that. Okay, maybe that's it. Yes. Do independent contractors count as employees for purposes of the small employer set aside? The SBA will consider the totality of the circumstances, including criteria used by the IRS for federal income tax purposes in determining whether individuals are employees of a concern. Where the IRS considers an individual to be an independent contractor rather than an employee, the SBA will do the same, and that individual will not be counted as an employee of the eligible entity for any purpose. Okay, we answered the depreciation question. Let me go back to open questions. Seth has given us a little bit of guidance. Thank you, Seth. See question 13, page 34 about fiscal versus calendar year. You can choose in the application whether to use fiscal or calendar year, but you have to keep it the same throughout. Thank you, Seth. We will verify that in just a second. If someone wants to look up, that was question 13, page 34. I'm back to Carol Waddell. We are an outdoor venue, so is maintenance such as grass mowing, adding gravel to paths, tree trimming, etc., an allowable expense? That is a really good one. I haven't heard that one before. As an outdoor venue, that would be maintenance of your venue. So would anyone like to hazard a guess? We're trying not to guess on these. We're trying to give you solid information. That may be much more specific than we're able to provide, though. So I think on that, Carol, I would encourage you to reach out to a counselor.
It does say, I'm sorry, Cynthia, if I can just, allowable use of funds other than ordinary and necessary business expenses, including maintenance cost.
Okay,
So to me, those would fall under maintenance cost.
That sounds, I would agree with that, Carol. I hope that's helpful. All right, let me just skip over. That's all of our open questions at the moment. Let's skip over to our answered questions. And thank you for the participants who are also reading these FAQs closely, and you've been able to kind of help us to find the answers for some of the participants. I think we've gotten, is there anything that we have missed? Any other additional questions? Oh, Steve Strickland is clarifying on what counts as a performing artist. We often include published authors who read from their works and have AV, so I guess it's audiovisual presentations. We also hire yoga practitioners, musicians, and dancers as performers. We want to be certain that all of these count as performing artists within a festival setting.
He needs to call me.
Paige is willing.
Within that list, some yes, some no.
Right.
Yes.
So
if he could reach out to me, I'd be glad to help him work through that.
Okay, that's great. So actually, when you enter you can enter a comment. You can say, please connect me with Paige Griffith when you request your ERFC. All right, guys, I think that's it for our FAQs. So I want to take just a couple minutes. If you have any others, do enter them. We're about 13 minutes from the top of the hour, but I did want to take a couple minutes just to again thank our panelists. Thank you to my colleagues for being so well prepared, and thank you to the participants for your excellent questions. Again, we're here to help as much as possible. We are acting as business partners to the SBA. There are other resource partners who are also answering questions. They are listed here, and we do want to thank them as well for coming alongside all of our excellent venue operators and talent managers to help this industry recover from what has been a very challenging experience. So again, we do ask that you would reach out to get specific advice by going to sptdc.org/ERFC. And if you'd like to review this webinar, like all of our webinars, it will be available at sptdc.org/coronavirus/webinars.html. That should be available in about 24 hours. It doesn't look like we have any other questions. Oh, wait, something just popped up. Hold on. Can't switch back. One more. Richard, I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name. I don't want to do it wrong. A large portion of our revenues come from the local city hotel tax. What type of income is this? Oh, I love these interesting questions. All right, financial guru people on the call. What type of income would that be called? Revenue from the local city hotel tax. So that may be one of those, Bob, you unmuted. I'm gonna.
No, I was just going to say that's probably one that we might have to pass up the chain or ask an accountant for advice on that. So
that sounds great.
Yeah. And one thing I did want to say before we close is what we've been doing is we actually go through the Q&As because we know that in this format, we can only answer at a certain level of detail. So we do try to follow up with everybody who has asked a question just to see if there are additional clarifications or if we can help you in another way. So that's the reason that we don't do anonymous questions, is we want to be able to follow up with you.
Exactly. So you will hear from us if you answer a question to make sure that we got you the information you needed. Thanks, Bob, for that reminder. I think that's it for us today, everyone. I appreciate the questions and I hope this was helpful and informative. Again, I thank you to our panelists and everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful afternoon.